Chicago Roboto 2018. We're so excited to have everyone here. We've got people from all over the world, speakers and attendees included, which is really exciting. And we've got great turnout, a whole bunch of great sponsors. Make sure you visit them and back. We'll talk a bit more about some of those. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, so I'm going to be pretty quick so we can get started. But one thing that we want to do, we want to make sure that everyone takes pictures and posts them so you can use the hashtag Chicago Roboto. Wear your shirts today, tomorrow. But yeah, so definitely take pictures of yourself, take pictures of the event, and make sure you share on all the social media sites.
I gotta talk about that. Oh yeah, you do the app. It's which one?
So one other thing, last year we had a lot of fun with the Chicago Roboto app. So Chicago Roboto has an Android app, because we're an Android conference. You can find it on the Play Store. And what's cool about it is it's open source. So at github.com/rharder/Chicago Roboto or something like that, Google it, is probably the best way to find it. Last year we had a whole ton of contributions during the conference, a bunch of PRs to improve the app. And we sort of had our own little open source community going during the conference. I know I have a PR to merge as soon as I get off stage. But everybody's invited. We'd love to have all of your contributions. So if you want to contribute to the app, make it better, we really enjoy that. And you can find that online.
Sweet. All right, so a couple more quick things. Again, just one more big thank you and shout out to our sponsors. Definitely at some point today or tomorrow, go and talk to all of them. Thank them for supporting this. I haven't created it yet, but there will be a Women in Tech channel like last year on the Slack team. So any of the women in the audience that want to hop in there and discuss anything, or guys that have questions, whatever, that'll be a thing that exists soon. If you're new this year, the way we do lunch is it's off-site. We'll have lunch tickets at the registration table right before the session before lunch, or just on your way out the door before lunch. Just grab one of them. There's 4 venues. It's Epic Burger, M Burger, an Italian place I can't remember the exact name of, and Yolk, which is like a breakfast sandwich kind of joint. They're all no more than 2 blocks away. So you're welcome to form a group, pick one of those places. You can sit outside, you can eat there, you can bring your lunch back here to eat. The venue will be open. But yeah, explore a little bit of Chicago. It's supposed to be nice today, so get out and enjoy a little bit of sun and then come back ready to spend the afternoon learning more. Tonight's reception, sponsored by Nerdery, is at their office. So I put it in the last email, and I'll also put it in Slack, but there's a Lyft discount code, so you got to use Lyft. If you don't have that, create an account real fast, or pool with somebody that does. But the discount code will get you there and back basically tonight, or within a certain zone if you didn't want to come right back to this location. But yeah, so all of that's on us, so you can get there easily and enjoy the party. There's a whole long laundry list of fun stuff that they've got in store for us, and then get back here or to your hotel in the area. Bathrooms, if you haven't found them yet, are upstairs, directly behind you. And the last thing is, this bit.ly link is for our Google Photo Pool. So hop on that, take pictures all day today. Like Joe said, tweet, post to Instagram, and then also just upload them here because it's just a great way to see everybody's photos. And it's also, we just pool some of them every once in a while. We'll grab things for email blasts and things like that. So that is it for housekeeping. We will, what about the
lanyards, colors?
Oh yeah, in case you didn't catch it, the colors on the lanyards are, we don't have an official photographer, but just it's your photography preference. So if you're more shy and don't want your face on the internet, swap out for a red one. If you just want to make sure someone's posting it in a place that you're okay posting it, put a yellow one. Basically, if you see a yellow one and you're just snapping photos, just ask that person if they're cool with their face being on Twitter. And if they have a red one, try not to get them in any group shots. But if I take a picture of this audience, you're going to be in the photo. So just a heads up, shy folks. But yeah, that's how that works. Normally, if we have a photographer, it makes more of a difference. But if we're all just snapping pictures, just so you know what the coloring all means. But yeah, all right, I think good. All right, cool. Then without further ado, we will give up the stage. Welcome, Yash.
Morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Good? Ready to learn some Android? Yeah? Cool. All right. My name is Yash Prabhu. I'm a senior software engineer and Android team lead at Warner Brothers Digital Labs. And today I want to talk to you about being more than an Android developer. So every year when I fill out the form for Google I/O, I have a mini existential crisis. Because I don't know what job role best describes my current primary occupation. Am I a front-end developer? Am I a full-stack developer? Am I a back-end developer? And why is Android developer not an option? Doesn't Google own Android? This is so bizarre. Anyway, I always go with a full-stack developer because I think I am. I don't know. But I go with that option, and every year I do not win the I/O lottery. So let's talk about full stack. Now, full stack is a term that comes from the web world. People who have experience in like PHP, JS, expertise in all different levels of software engineering. So how do we apply that to the Android domain, right? This is an Android conference, so why am I talking about full stack? So generally, full stack means that we have expertise on these different things. DevOps, data modeling, business logic, API, user interface, user experience, and interfacing with our users as well as our business stakeholders. As Android developers, I believe we already do a lot of these things. I'm sure many of us have set up Circle CI, Buddy Build, rest in peace, Jenkins, data modeling. We've also done a lot of data modeling with like SQLite, Realm. We write all our business logic in our activities. We work with APIs all day long. We are always thinking of material design, UI, and our user experience for our users. So that's the tech stack of it. On the people stack, what I like to call the people stack, is we interface with our users. Our users are one click away from us through the Google Play console, through the Google Play Store. And we also interface with our business stakeholders. So I want to talk more about that today. So we can't really separate the tech stack from the people stack. Right? As full stack developers, as being more than Android developers, the tech and the people part, it's part of us. We can't really separate it. And you're here today, you're here at this community, here at this conference to engage with this community, and you're also here to learn from everyone else. So, if you didn't come out all the way here, you could probably have watched this all on YouTube. But there's a reason why you came out, because you wanted to hang out with all the other Android developers, and you wanted to learn from them. So you can't really separate tech and people. So there are certain things that I want to talk about today, 3 things. Always be learning, be an Android advocate, and to communicate and collaborate. So let's start with always be learning. Now, Android's been around for 10 years. I think this is the 10th year of Android. And our jobs did not exist 10 years ago. So it's a field that is so new and it's constantly changing. So how do we, keep up with this ever-changing field? For that, I want to take a step back into my history with Android and how I evolved with Android. When I was in school a long time ago, I had a summer project which was to build an Android app in a week. And the app that I built basically put 2 things that I love together, food and technology. So the app basically found all the food trucks in the campus and showed it on a list view. This is like the old days before recycler view. Showed it on a list view on my HTC Hero, which ran on 2.1. And that feeling of having, I can actually run this app on a pocket computer. This fits in my pockets. That's so incredible. So that was my first foray into the Android world. And soon after, I was hired as a software engineer, and I was given an iPad design to develop for Google TV. I'm not kidding. After that, I realized that I had to be an Android advocate, as being a power user or a person who knows Android. I should be the one who speaks up and says, no, an iPad design doesn't work for me. I need to have a design that works for Android. So for 2.5 years, I was a solo developer. And then I had someone else join my team. And I learned so much more from them. I learned about RX Java, and as more people started joining the team, I learned about Dagger and other Square libraries like Retrofit. And I realized that as a solo developer, I did not know as much because I had no sounding board, no one to actually speak with at work. So I had to go out and find that in the community. But as more people joined the team, I gained expertise from their previous workplaces because they had learned a lot at their other workplaces. So one thing I did realize in this whole journey of me evolving with Android is that you will never know all the things. It's really impossible to know all the things because there's so much to learn. So don't kind of feel left out. You will never know all the things, and that's completely okay. So come to terms with the feeling that, oh my God, I don't know anything. I have so much to learn. But whatever you can focus on that. So I want to talk about some different ways to learn. Not just, like coming to conferences is a great way. But there are 3 different ways that I think we can learn. One is by teaching, the other is by doing, and the third one is by consuming. So one of the best ways that I learn something is by teaching. And the way I do that is I force myself to give a talk about a subject I know nothing about. So basically I sign up for a talk, like I did this recently, a couple of months back. I wanted to learn more about augmented reality. I knew nothing about it. I knew there were AR Core SDKs and this was in developer preview mode. And I was like, I'm going to sign up for it for giving a talk at the local meetup. And when I did that, I had like 5 days to prepare. 5 days to prepare the talk, 5 days to figure out what is going on in the subject, and then, basically teach this to everyone else. And in this process, I was able to learn something and also teach someone else. Excuse me. So, excuse me. Wow. I think it's allergies. Is it spring yet? Okay. So, yeah, one thing I realized is that teaching is the best way to learn. And there are other ways you can teach too. You can write a blog. You can write a blog post. Anytime you run into some issue that you think of at work, you can't solve the problem, and then you finally have an aha moment, and then you solve it, write about it. And it's helpful to a future developer. It's helpful to someone who's stuck in the same problem as you, who comes to your blog. It's also helpful to you in the future as well. Like there are some times that, right now I still don't know the difference between the different image scale types, and I still have to look that up and have someone else's blog post bookmarked because I still don't know the difference. So it's helpful when you have, you find something new, write about it. That way, not only are you teaching yourself, you're teaching somebody else. We can also learn by doing. I think it was Wynn's talk a while back where she talked about having a side project. And, I've seen a lot of Android developers do this, to have a side project that basically lets you experiment with whatever's coming out in Android. So last year it was Android architecture components, it was Kotlin. So basically have a simple side project that could hit a GitHub and API or something like that, some endpoint, and show it in a recycler view. And once you do that with like the most basic Android libraries, then you can experiment with data binding, with Dagger, with RxJava, with Kotlin, and anything else that you want to try it out on. The other things that you can do are the Android developer team sometimes runs these hashtags on Twitter where they have 31 days of Kotlin. They just ran that in March. And every day they put something out there like, here's a tip that you can do, something that you can try out in Kotlin. So you can do that as well to teach yourself more Android. And you can also consume. There's so much content out there. I'm sure you all have heard of fragmented podcasts, of Android Developer Backstage. There's tons of courses available online like Udacity, Caster.io, Coursera, so on. There's also books that you can read. There's Kotlin in Action, if you're still in the Java world, Effective Java. There are a lot of newsletters out there, Kotlin Weekly, Android Weekly, and the links to all of these are at the end of the slide, so I will share it with all of you. So one thing to remember is that you need to hold yourself accountable. Just like we have work deadlines, right? We need to ship something by the end of this month. You kind of have to hold yourself accountable personally. Because, tell you the truth, I have a lot of unfinished side projects, things I've never finished off because I get distracted by the next shiny thing. So we need to hold ourselves accountable. So you need to find something that holds you accountable, whatever it is. In my case, it's like I force myself to give a talk, and that way I have to prepare for the talk because I don't want to come up in front of all of you and just mess that up. But also, there's so much to learn in Android. Don't feel like you have to constantly keep doing this outside of your day job. If you have learning and development time, which is worked out into your work time, then make sure you can do that at your workplace. I know a lot of us have other things going on. We don't really have to breathe Android 24/7. So make sure you take a break. It's important to take a break and take some time out for yourself and not always do Android to become an expert. You don't have to be breathing Android 24/7 to be an expert. So, which brings me to the next point, being an Android advocate. Now, remember when I told you that I was given an iPad design and asked to develop for Google TV? It's ridiculous. I was like, there are no native components here, how am I supposed to do this? And I'm building for a 10-foot experience and I get an iPad design. So that was a time when I felt like I need to speak up and tell the product and design folks, this is not something that I can do, because I already spent like a couple of weeks on it and I felt really silly that I couldn't solve this problem. And the problem wasn't mine. The problem was I was given the wrong set of designs for a different native platform. So if you're learning about all of these things, try to be an Android advocate in your workplace, in your community. Speak up when you see something looks what I call iOS-y. So speak up when you see something like that. So I want to tell you a small story about how we built our first, a second iteration of the app at work. We spent about 6 months, spoke with our designers. This was sometime in late 2013, early 2014. And we built this app pre-material design guidelines. And we looked at all the apps in the store, and then we're like, okay, this is how we should build it. I think this is the best way to do it. And we released it in May 2014, and the very same year, in May 2014, at Google I/O, they announced material design guidelines. So our app was immediately outdated. And all of the work that we did felt so futile. So it's at that point, we realized as developers, we were 3 developers in the team, that we need to speak up and say, this is important for us to be, to look at. It's important for us to embrace material design guidelines, because finally Android has design guidelines. And this process took about 2 years. Speaking with our designers, we are trying to learn more about material design ourselves, using more support libraries, and speaking with our product folks, and finally getting that buy-in from everyone around us that it's time to revamp the design portion of our app. So we did that. It took us 2 whole years, but we did it. And it was important because our app doesn't feel outdated anymore. It feels like we're part of this community. The other big announcement at I/O last year was Kotlin. And the thing about Kotlin is I feel like it's time for all of us to embrace it. Now, previously, we've been hearing about Kotlin in conferences on and off for like the past couple of years, but I didn't want to embrace it. And other people on the team didn't want to embrace it because it didn't have the official Google support, and we didn't know if this is just going to be a fad. We weren't sure. We didn't know that Google was going to back it up at Google I/O. And when that announcement happened, we're like, oh, finally, now we can embrace it without any sort of concerns, because there are so many people learning this at the same time. So if you feel like you're part of, you're still in the Java world, it's going to take some time. I'm not telling you to switch over immediately to Kotlin. It's going to take some time. Be patient with yourself. Try to embrace it, because the whole community is so excited about it and is out there, helping you. There is a talk about Kotlin tomorrow, the Road to Kotlin Town by Wen and Christina, so do attend that. This is a single-track conference, so you cannot really miss anything. So the last portion I want to talk about is to collaborate and communicate. So I talked about, learning Android, always learning different ways to learn Android, and, talking about Android, spreading the love of Android. But we have to work within our teams and outside of our teams. So let's start with that. So when you're building an app or a feature, it generally starts with, the business team coming up with, here's a feature, we've done some research on it, and I think this is going to increase our subscriber count, right? So once you do that, you make sure that your product folks and your design folks come up with the specifications and wireframes. You take that, you convert that into actual code and a feature that a user can use, and then it is released into the world. You also make sure your QA team tests it. So this is the general way things work out. So I want to talk about the code part, within your team. So when we write code, we usually write code, we open up a pull request, we push it up onto GitHub, or whatever your version control system is, and someone else looks at the code. And one of the things that you can do, which is helpful for the rest of your team, is to have an agreed upon code style. Just like you have like material design guidelines in a design system or whatever at work, you need to have an agreed upon code style. And Google provides some of these. There are Java code styles, there are Kotlin style guides. Square has a Java code style that you can install into your Android Studio. So that way everybody is running the same code style locally, and you're not nitpicking on white spaces and braces and like next lines and all of that stuff. So it's important to have a code style that we all agree on. This makes sure that your code reviews are easier. So if someone on the team is like, hey, this looks different on my, when I pull down your branch, it's looking different and things changed, maybe you all don't have the same Android Studio templates or Android Studio settings. So it's helpful to do code reviews in this case. Also, remember that it's helpful to have small PRs, small pull requests, because you don't want to open a file, open a pull request that has 200 file changes and expect your coworkers to look through it, because nobody has the time or the inclination to look through 200 file changes. So keep your PRs really small. Other things that you can do is to have is to automate where you can. Right? You can use static code analysis like lint and check style, and make sure that you run it locally before you push it up. Instead of waiting on your CI/CD to run it, do it locally so you have that peace of mind and you're not waiting how many ever minutes for Jenkins or other CI tools to do it for you. The other thing we don't often talk about in software development is time boxing. Right? A lot of times we have this thing that I'm going to solve this problem and it's going to take 5 minutes, and then that 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes, and then it becomes 5 hours, and then it becomes 2 days, and you're still trying to solve this problem. If you have people around you that you can ask questions to, stop what you're doing and ask them the question. It's kind of like asking a question on Stack Overflow. You write down what the problem is, you figure out where you're getting stuck, and then ask that question. So time box when you're doing something, because you learn a lot from it. You learn a lot from your coworker who's probably done this before and run into the same problem, so they can tell you how to fix the problem. Which brings me to rubber ducking. Rubber ducking is a term that we use in software development, which is basically you keep a plastic rubber duck on your desk and explain the problem to the rubber duck. And when you start explaining the problem, you slowly figure out the solution. Right? So if you don't have a plastic rubber duck, use your coworkers or an Android squishy or whatever you want to use, because this is important for you to kind of explain the problem, but it's easier for you to solve it. And be a rubber duck for other people on your team as well. It improves your mentorship skills, and you're able to onboard junior developers on the team quickly. So there are other tools that you can use within your team. You might have issue trackers like Jira. You could have your version control systems. You could be using design tools like InVision, Simply, Zeppelin, all of which makes it easier for you to collaborate with your designers. And all of these tools now support dips and not pixels. One thing I want to talk about, Jenkins or Circle CI, whatever you're using, is important. I have a story here of how I failed miserably. Once, a long time back, we had no QA team, and I hand-rolled a build and uploaded on the store without pulling from master. And as soon as it went up on the store, our users started noticing that something wasn't working, the app was crashing. And if we had a CI/CD tool set up and all those tests ran, then we would have caught this earlier and not when it was actually on the store. So make sure that you have all those automations set up, all the configuration set up, so your app is tested and vetted before it goes onto the store. There are other tools that you can use. There's Charles and Wireshark, web proxy tools that you can use that lets you inspect network calls. This is really helpful when you're speaking with the QA team and they're trying to figure out how to debug a problem. There's Postman, which I really swear by. This is an amazing API debugging tool that lets you, again, inspect your network calls, and then it lets you change between staging and production environments to make sure you're getting the same response. There are other tools that you can use. Facebook has a tool called Stetho, which lets you inspect network calls as well. And in all this that we're doing, remember, we need to be Android advocates, right? Think about things that have business impact. It's not always about the code. It's not always about making things look pretty. It's also about things that bring in revenue. So a long time back, a bunch of us went to a meetup, a local meetup, and someone was talking there about smart log. Now, smart log is a feature that is helpful for users to sign in with their, automatically sign in with their saved credentials. So you can set this up on Android and web. And we were enamored by this. Like, why did we not hear about this before? And we took it back to a product team, and we found plenty of use cases and user studies on Android developer stories online. And we realized that since Netflix integrated it, they had a 30% increase in their sign-in. Now, this had a drastic business impact. So we were like, let's implement this as well, because this has a business impact on our apps. And if we hadn't gone to that meetup, if we hadn't brought that idea back, we would have never known. And this is an example of being an Android advocate. When you hear about something and you think this has value to your company or your workplace, bring it back. Now, other things that I love to do is to have testing parties. With Android, it's that, the tasty treats thing. Cupcake is one of my favorite things to do. It's like get a dozen cupcakes or more, get all the people that have worked on this project in one room. And if they're remote, get them on the other side. I know you can't give them cupcakes, but at least there's a promise of it. And get them cupcakes, put them in a room, and give them a bunch of devices. They can be Android developers or not Android developers. Get a bunch of devices, install the APK on them, and let them test away. At that time, take down notes. Get their feedback from them, and put this back into your issue tracker system so you can fix those bugs and make your app a better app. Because this is your first line of defense. This kind of alpha testing is your first line of defense before it goes out to your users. There's also beta testing that you can do, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So there's Google Play Console, which is your friend. A lot of times we feel like it has changed a lot since we first started using it. There are a lot of tools that you can use on Google Play Console, like beta testing, stage rollouts, bug reporting, crash reporting, and so on. And this is one of the new things that they introduced last year at I/O, which was Android Vitals. And you can now take a look at your crash rate. So maybe you have an internal metric. The internal metric that we have is we need to have a 1% crash rate. And if it goes beyond that, we have to immediately release an update to make sure that we take care of this problem and this crash rate doesn't go up. So a lot of times we're doing stage rollouts when we have we release to like 5% of our users, and then we realize the crash rate has gone up above 1%. Then we halt that stage rollout, we fix that bug, we release that update again, and make sure that it's below that 1%. And this is important to do because you want to have you want your users to have a good user experience, or it'll end up like like this. When they come here, you want to have something like, oh, I love this app, I love using it. You want a 5-star review. You don't want a demoralizing 1-star review which says this app sucks. So think about how you can make the user experience better for your users. If you have really active users, super fans, make them your beta testers. If you have an open beta, put a call out on social media and say, hey, we're trying out this new feature, sign up for this. And that way you get feedback from your super fans almost immediately. Also have meaningful error messages. We don't talk about this much. Having something like, oops, that didn't work, H4, where H here stands for an HTTP error. Have like an internal error code system where it becomes easy for users to report this. So they can say, oh, I saw an H4 error, I'm not able to get into the app, this goes to the customer support team. And the customer support team reports it back to you saying, they saw an H4 error, they don't know how to fix it. If you have more information that you can add there, make sure that's like 1 or 2 lines because nobody wants to read a lot of text. And you can also have report this bug or some option like that so they can just press a button and report feedback to you immediately. There are a lot of crash reporting tools that help with this. So look into that and provide useful error messages. Another thing to do is also have version codes. So if you have a version code and the commit hash, it's easier for the users to report or your QA team to report that, hey, there's this particular version, the app is crashing, we don't know why, it's out on the store, and this is a commit hash. So it's easy for them to, easy for you as a developer to know how to fix it. So I talked about being part of a team, right? We're learning all these different things. I talked about QA teams, like our product designers and so on. What if you're a solo developer? I know a lot of people have been in this position because Android developers tend to work in really, really small teams, and sometimes the team is just one. So in my case, I was an Android developer for 2.5 years. And there were many advantages to it and also disadvantages. The advantage being that I ended up wearing many hats. I was working on API calls, I was working on Python and so many other languages that I was kind of learning on the job because there was a need to do that. And I was also working on the client side. But the things that were missing for me are things I mentioned before. There was no one to do my code reviews. I was just pushing up stuff onto the Play Store without a QA team. I didn't have anyone to rub it up with. And I had no one to be my sounding board. And I found all of that in the community. So I had to go out into like meetups, find local meetups, the local Google developers group, and find the people there because there was no one around me as a solo developer who could be my sounding board. There is a talk by Dan tomorrow about the future of community that I'm looking forward to. So I hope he gives us some tips on getting the best from our communities. So we talked about always be learning, being an Android advocate, and to collaborate and communicate. And to also take time, to not breathe Android 24/7, to take some time for ourselves. And whenever we come across things like, oh, we can do this in Android, if there is an equivalent feature to iOS, this is something we can do. And we can also, collaborate and communicate within our teams and outside of our teams, especially outside of with our users as well as our business stakeholders. But before we go, I have 2 more things. One, have 3 new takeaways from this conference. A lot of talks. It's a single track conference, a lot of talks today, a lot of talks tomorrow. Make sure you have at least 3 new takeaways that you can take back to your team, to your workplace, to your community, something you've never heard of before. And if a speaker mentions this and you think it's really cool, go talk to them about it. And the second thing is make 3 new friends. My personal goal when I go to any conference is to meet 3 new people. We all have this habit when we come to a conference that we tend to hang out with people we already know and our coworkers and people we're already familiar with. But instead of hanging out with the same people, make 3 new friends. And if you're a shy person, the kind who doesn't like to be photographed or the kind who doesn't want to speak to other people, then I will tell you some ways to do that. If a speaker gives a really good talk, go talk to them, say that, oh, this was amazing, and show them your appreciation. That's an easy way that you've now made a new friend. If, between talks is like 15 minutes, just turn around and talk to the people next to you. You already have something in common, which is Android. So that's a great conversation starter. So just turn around and speak to people next to you. Make sure they're not your coworkers because you didn't come all the way here to hang out with your coworkers. So go hang out with people you don't know. And today there is a social function in the evening, yet another opportunity for you to meet more people. And there's also a Slack group for Chicago Roboto, yet another opportunity for you to meet new people and maybe make plans to go explore Chicago. So that's it. Thank you so much for coming. Remember, if you don't remember anything else from this talk, remember the 2 takeaways, which is to make 3 new friends and have 3 new takeaways. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.